Omar Offendum is a poet based in Los Angeles. He's known for his unique blend of hip-hop and Arabic poetry, and he has written a new piece for us today about his personal connection to Charlottesville, North Carolina. Let's welcome Omar.
Virginia. Mr. Jefferson, we haven't met before, but I'd like to think I know you pretty well. After all, I visited your home in Monticello on a number of occasions. I've read some of your most acclaimed writings. I even graduated from the institution you took great pride in founding. Nestled in the picturesque hills of Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains, I studied architecture there and spent many an afternoon sketching the rotunda and the lawn, learning about how you thoughtfully designed their layout according to a unique vision for education that wasn't rooted in any specific religious tradition, but rather in science, art, reason, and the pursuit of knowledge. So much so that the campus chapel very much feels like an afterthought. Not surprising, given your feelings about separation of church and state, a complicated figure you were, Mr. Jefferson. I wonder if you'd be surprised to find out my Jewish brother-in-law would eventually be given the honor of living on the lawn. I wonder if you'd be surprised to learn that two of the most famous graduates of your fine Southern institution in recent years were women, whom, as you know, Mr. Jefferson wouldn't have been allowed to attend when it was first established or even vote for you to be president. Shout outs to Katie Kirk and Tina Fey. I wonder if you'd be surprised to find out that the first Muslim congressman in the history of this great nation would later be sworn in onto office on your own personal copy of the Quran, to spite and in spite of vehement objections from Virginia Republican Representative Virgil Goode. I wonder if you'd be surprised to see me, Omar, a Syrian, American, Muslim immigrant, fall in endless love with Ashley, a beautiful black, Jewish Virginia native, and begin the first chapter of our 15-year-strong Semitic, European, Arab, Asiatic, African-American love affair. And Mr. Jefferson, given your well-documented indifference to the destruction of black families and long-held belief that their, quote, griefs were transient, I wonder if you would be sympathetic to our concerns about what your beloved Charlottesville has come to represent to this country. Mr. Jefferson, I wonder if you'd ever be able to look at yourself in a mirror and admit that you had in many ways laid the foundation for white supremacy in this country, by arguing that black people's ability to reason was, quote, much inferior to whites, and that, quote, in imagination they were dull, tasteless, and anomalous. Look, Mr. Jefferson, I know you felt that by opposing the spread of slavery in the West, the children of the American Revolution were about to, quote, perpetrate an act of suicide on themselves and of treason against the hopes of the world. So I can't help but wonder if you wrote that nonsense after Ms. Hemings rejected your advances, and I wonder if you felt vindicated when you raped her, Mr. Jefferson. I wonder what the word honor really meant to you, because we talked about it a lot at UVA, Mr. Jefferson, and I wonder if you don't mind that I tell my beautiful baby boy that his grandfather was the first black Secretary of Education in the Commonwealth of Virginia, not only because of how brilliant he is, but because of how people like you, Mr. Jefferson, made it virtually impossible for Virginians to recognize the brilliance of any of his ancestors before him. Mr. Jefferson, I wonder if you'd have joined the ranks of graduates like Richard Spencer and heralded his alt-right cause as a preservation of the American life you envisioned for your progeny, or join the ranks of graduates like me as we fight to uphold the inconvenient truths you boldly declared were self-evident in that most revolutionary of enlightened documents you penned, Mr. Jefferson. I wonder how far your eyes would roll to the back of your head if you heard someone like me saying stuff like this today. Hopefully far enough to see the trail of tears at Heather Harris' funeral after she was murdered by a neo-Nazi who had hate-fueled ignorance in his heart and Bashar al-Assad propaganda photos on his Facebook page. This world is complicated and connected in ways you and your complicated self would have never thought possible, Mr. Jefferson. Neither the rarity of a $2 bill nor the near worthlessness of a 5-cent nickel means shit in a world where hurricanes and earthquakes come a dime a dozen. where the American dream can seem like a carrot on a stick to the thousands of youth who have to come up with $495 by October 5th to renew their DACA status or risk being deported back to a country they may no longer have any meaningful connection to, or a complicated one at best. Mr. Jefferson, you once said, "I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them." Well, here we are, living in a country where billions of our hard-earned tax dollars are continually pledged to the propagation of bombs, bullets, and police batons, not the preservations of our precious bodies and babies' ability to take a deep, clean breath. Mr. Jefferson, like you, I prefer the dreams of the future to the history of the past. And my past included growing up in and around D.C., a city that showed me how decisions made in a think tank conference room on one side of the world could have profoundly lethal effects on the physical well-being of millions of people on the other side. While my present and foreseeable future includes living in LA, a city where decisions made in a studio conference room can have profound effects on the mental and emotional well-being of millions of people the world over. A city of tastemakers, narrative builders, a city of artists. Mr. Jefferson, I know you often said black people were, quote, inferior to whites in the endowments both of body and mind, so I hope you can forgive me for ignoring that racist bullshit and reminding this audience of the words of a brilliant black writer named James Baldwin, who once said, and I quote, "In this country, if you're an artist, you're guilty of a crime. Not that you're aware, which is bad enough, but that you see things other people don't admit are there." This is a room full of people who see, who witness, who recognize the problems facing our collective communities and are committed to harnessing each and every aspect of our respective crafts and skill sets to inspire action and power change. And so, in conclusion, Mr. Jefferson, I wonder if you'd mind my ending with one last quote from your complicated self to inspire this beautiful audience. A quote that I ask we try our very best to divorce from the reality that it came from a man who owned 607 men, women, and children, and ultimately only granted freedom to 2 of them while he was alive and 5 of them in his will, none of whom were Ms. Hemings. And I quote, "In matters of style, swim with the current. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. Sincerely yours, Omar Offendum."